Do I want to be there or do I want to be sitting on the table? Slightly happier here.
Hi. Oh, John's here.
Morning, John.
Hello, hi Nick, how are you?
Hi, John.
I've obviously moved into a David Bowie album cover for this.
Very cool.
Very station to station.
Totally.
Trying to get our message a little bit on brand, but I've been singing Young Americans in my head all morning, so.
Imagine.
We can do virtual background as well.
I don't want
Wow. Stay in space. We're both channeling Bowie. Fantastic.
That was really good, that one.
Music seems to play quite a big part in what you do. One of the comments that we have on one of our many recorded Zoom calls is you were saying that you have different music for different parts of your process. So when you're cutting, you have one music. When you're fitting, you have another music. I just wondered if that's sort of something that you could elaborate on a little bit, because it was a little line that sort of dropped in one of our conversations.
No, it's true. I mean, I recognize the power of music.
Yeah.
It can be uplifting, it can level you out, it can knock out exterior sounds sometimes. So it is true, depending on the mood I want to be in. And it's not something I'm very conscious about, it kind of happens. I'll play certain pieces of music. Sometimes it's classical or piano, which means I kind of feel good, receptive, but I don't have to hear the noises around me in a fitting. Sometimes I want to obliterate all noise and I just want to give the muse the energy.
Yeah.
So I can't think when that happens, but what's happening is I'm creating an energy for the muse to express himself or herself. And that speaks volumes. I just kind of watch. And then sometimes the music will color, help me aquarelle a vision, or set a mood, which will affect both myself and the muse. Yeah. How they wear the clothes, how the clothes move. That's a fitting. But when you see that, then that makes me go the next step. A fault will jump out much quicker in movement. We take pictures during our fittings as well, and I always kind of cross-reference and with pictures we see. I mean, at the end of the day, we're designing in 360 and creating beautiful clothes. So music does play a very large part in the creative process, yeah.
Because one of our references, or one of your references that we've worked on, of course, is the Blitz Club and the Blitz Kids, and your romantics, and all that moment. Which, were you just a little bit young for that, John? Was that sort of your year you want?
No, I did actually go to the Blitz Club.
Right.
I had met Princess Julia through a friend of mine, Maria, who worked at Mrs. Howie, which was at the other end of Longacre.
All right.
And I became the Saturday boy at Mrs. Howie. And there was a great girl there who did the windows, Janine. And she could see I had a kind of artistic bent and invited me to help her do the windows. And that's how we initially met Julia. I don't know if Princess Julia remembers that, but I was the nice Spanish boy. Yeah, and so I did go to the Blitz, and I did own my own Willie Brown suit, modern classics, brown and blue with a yellow oak leaf embroidered on the collar. So yeah, that was kind of, well, we all know politically what we were going through and all that suppression and repression. So it was a place to release it, quite frankly. It was the most hedonistic place, and the looks, I mean, the looks were just phenomenal. I mean, I hadn't become the JG we know today. I was kind of learning and taking it all in, but because some of these guys were kind of 2 years ahead of me at school, so they had it really refined and down to, you know, the looks were incredible and so inspiring, along with the music, along with Steve Strange and all the characters that we've been reminiscing.
I wonder if that sort of suppression of the time creates a sort of equal and opposite reaction, so that you're sort of, you know, the more you suppress, the more fantasy becomes important, because it is such a fantastic moment, that, I mean, visually fantastic.
For sure, that energy was something we've spoken about, was something I wanted to tap into. And for sure, when you suppress, it has to explode somewhere. So yeah, when your back's up against the wall, and it was the Thatcher years, you become your most creative, but that energy is so particular, and it felt so relevant as well, with us all being in lockdown and in confine. I guess one was hankering for that, along with aspirational beauty. At least that's what I was feeling.
Yeah, and because, I mean, we should just rewind a little bit, I guess, because for people not quite knowing how all this came about, we should do a little bit of a sort of recap. Just because, you know, it's obviously, it's an incredibly big step for yourself and for myself as well, to show all the process in such a complete way, because you had, you know, yourself being recorded on Zoom calls, on webcams, on people's phones, on GoPros, on virtually every camera, on drones flying over the building, you know, on red cameras, on thermal cameras. It couldn't have been a more fully sort of, you know,
intrusive moment.
Did it feel intrusive or liberating? Which?
Well, I kind of, in my head, I mean, first of all, Nick, I was able to do it thanks to you, because I trust you.
Oh, thank you.
And trusting you, my team could see that I was in a good headspace, and mentally in my head, I was in a good space. And because they follow me blindly, I mean, so they felt that, and so they supported me in everything. I mean, and after, I say 48 hours, probably took a bit longer. At first it was fun, and but for sure, when a drone flies into the room, I mean, you drop everything and hello. But they very quickly focused on the job at hand and the collection we had to produce. Part of that, again, was to do with trust, Nick, I think. It's the idea of being completely sans filtrage, transparent, the idea that if we could capture this sense of hope that occurs during the creative process, it just felt really the right time to do this. And yeah, if we want to backtrack a bit, I mean, the idea came around in the lockdown. I was abroad. I was traveling, and then suddenly the things became so serious, and I tried to educate myself on what was going on, and kind of, the more I did, the more afraid I became. And there were so many mixed messages because I was traveling. I was getting the BBC news, I was getting the French news, I was getting CNN from America, and all the different points of view along the different timelines as each country was going through the most grave moments. And it was there that I was full of anguish and anxiety, and as I said, the more I tried to educate myself, the more anxious I became. And then I kind of just reminded myself of the tools I'd been given when I was in rehab, which I used daily to get me through the day, and just realizing that the situation would call for patience with a big P, and that nothing was going to change until there was some kind of vaccine found. And accepting the situation and maybe accepting the fact that with the situation could come something new, could come almost being forced, you know, being brought to my knees, the mercy of nature, when even I, sometimes when I'm not in the present, I'm very independent and forget that I'm not independent from nature. We are at one, but we do forget. So suddenly, we're brought to the mercy of nature.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, I'm sure everyone felt that too. It was like, whoa, huge bells went off. So sadness, the idea that fashion would never be the same, the feeling that fashion as I knew it or as I had presented it would change, would be different. Now, when I got my head around that, I kind of went through my mourning period, if you like, because you have to, you have to, you know, whether it was a loss of identity, a loss of the way of working, the image, that all these things running around one's head, and also being aware of what was going on in the world. And a kind of calmness came into me, and I embraced the situation, and I thought, this could be really interesting, John. The idea of creating a blueprint for a way of presenting the collection and the work that goes into it in a new way became really appealing. And the idea of messaging in a very transparent way, you know, I was following Dr. Fauci, and he was the guy that was giving us the straight messages, you know, at the time. And it kind of inspired me to embrace this idea that somehow it would be a really cool moment to reinforce everything we believe in at Maison Margiela, the ethics, everything that we believed in, and that we could find a way of showing it. Our thoughts on sustainability, recycler, all the things that I do that come as natural as breathing to us at Maison Margiela. I thought, well, this would be a really fantastic moment to illustrate this. And then, of course, I thought of you.
Well, thank you. I'm very, very pleased and very, very honoured you thought of me. That's very. I mean, I think that in a way, it's sort of this new way of talking about your collection, talking about the work you do, showing the process is so illuminating. Because, of course, I've known you for some years now, John, and we worked together on lots of different projects. So, of course, I know, and I've had the privilege to come to the atelier and have you explain the work to me. One of the conversations that we had many moons ago when we were working for Dior was you sat me down in front of the VHS cassette of your show and said, watch this, and you talked me through it. And hearing you explain what you did totally revolutionized my thinking about how to present fashion, and really one of the first seeds of SHOWstudio, the idea of fashion film, and also showing the process, and the idea of that actually if you have somebody who's intelligent and passionate and knows their subject talking to you about it, it's really engaging. And fashion in some ways has perhaps suffered a little bit from the lack of those people, like yourself, you know, who know about this subject in such an amazing way, but actually hearing you talk about it really illuminates it. I mean, you know, it's a silly parallel, but we talked a little bit about the planet. But if you look at how David Attenborough talks about his subject, he talks about, you know, and it might be the reproductive cycle of the stag beetle or whatever it is, which in itself isn't necessarily the most gripping thing. But when you hear David Attenborough about it,
it's the passion, isn't it?
The knowledge and the passion combined, and that idea, that for me, I think comes across really well in this. You know, hearing you talk, and as I say, I have had the joy, the fun, and the privilege of hearing you talk over the years a lot. But hearing you talk like this, and you felt that you were so at ease with talking like that. It felt totally natural. I didn't feel any, you know, we all put our best foot forward when we're in front of the cameras in a way. But sometimes just being who we are, really who we are, is the most beautiful thing and the most powerful thing. And I think that for me comes across as one of the very strong parts of the film we've made. Is that I know there's no filter, there's nothing, sort of, and it's not an expose. It doesn't feel that in any way you're being forced into the light. It's just you're naturally who you are.
Yeah, no, I didn't feel forced at all. It just took a bit of getting used to this very kind of quiet moment with the team, the creative process. But then it's kind of quite interesting because what one would consider slightly intrusive, I feel comes across. It really is. So when I see some of the footage, it really is, makes you feel like you're not meant to be there. There is this feeling of this voyeuristic feeling, or the way it's recorded, the sound and everything. And that's kind of the feeling one had at the beginning. The idea to explore the vocabulary of a thriller or a horror, which was real fun too. But again, if you're watching it, the adrenaline or the excitement or what it does to you physically, it puts you in the same state almost as when you're on the hunt and you're doing your research, and some days are great, you find it, there's a high, one door opens another day's not so good. So just the idea of playing with that grammar to represent the research and the process work was really exciting for me. Seeing, as you were directing and advising on different ways of filming and recording, and me being able to see the visuals in the fittings, well, of course, it made me rethink how to fabric allocate some of the things. When I saw how things turned like from black to white and different colors and arms became blues, it was like a revolution to me. It was like such fun to work. So this whole digital thing has been a huge learning curve for all of us, outside the norms of creating a beautiful collection for a runway show. So it's kind of really pushed us.
I'm really interested in that, whether the process of doing this and doing it in the way that we've chosen to do it, changed the design at all? Whether it's something that you felt actually had some influence, because normally you're working towards people seeing everything on a catwalk. So with all the parameters of that, it's a 15-minute show, people are walking up and down on a very sort of linear fashion. But because you can expand the narrative in that now, I wondered if that changed the actual design process to do the clothes look different for any reason to do with how we're presenting it or how we made it.
I don't think the designs look different. I work in 360, so even if it's on a runway, I am concerned with how the clothes move and the back views and all those things, how it feels to that. I mean, I do that. But as I said, the actual swatching or the fabric allocations, for sure, was greatly inspired by the footage or the way of recording that was coming in, for sure. I had that kind of, the marble statues inspired by Raphael and Montero in my head, and this idea of producing a wet look from head to toe. So that concept was all already taking shape, but the joy, that something you may have missed with the excitement and the hoopla that surrounds a runway show and the speed of, the muses, you could actually really see on film. That butter muslin is so stunning, that honest butter muslin was you could kind of feel it. It was really tactile. The layers of the lint and the canvas and the organzas. I mean, on film, it's just so divine. Just the chiffon floating in the air and how you were able to capture that and slow-mo it was just like something we don't register in the real world.
No.
In real time. It's so fast, everything. I mean, even if you are in the present, but how many of us are on that kind of runway schedule? How many are actually totally in the present? These fleeting seconds, moments, and that you miss. But now, thanks to you, you're able to see. It's like quite beautiful, really. You know, an honest chiffon that we all take for granted, but to actually see why we would do a pin hem finish to further enhance and liberate the fabric to do what it does. I mean, it's that simple, the technique, but you see it on film.
Yeah, no, it's always a pleasure photographing your clothes and filming your clothes because they evoke so many images. So in a way, I have a relationship with you, a sort of artistic relationship with you, where, you know, we find each other, I think, at a sort of quite an interesting level where we look, because I know you socially a little, and I've known you over the years socially a little. My most profound contact comes with you when we're actually working together. When I'm trying to interpret what you've done, trying to show you it back, try to make it the vision that perhaps you have in your head. So I'm really trying to understand your process, your thought process, and your desires, which of course is where the pleasure is for me. So my relationship with you feels very special in that way, because I spent, I don't know how long it is, John, I won't put years on it, but it's a while, trying to understand your art, trying to understand your soul, trying to understand your mind, to be able to express it in the most beautiful and the most, most complete way. It's a very interesting relationship to have with somebody.
Very, Nick, very, Nick. I have known some people for 30 years, and after being in Arizona, I realized how little that we knew about each other, as opposed to people that I just spent like 3 months with, where I'd been completely transparent. We had shared, and I was like, oh my God, I know more about these guys than I do about my friends I've known for 30 years. It was incredible. That moment, that creative moment where I'm not sure you're channeling energy, for sure you're giving so much energy, because I can feel the energy around you. It's palpable. I can almost see a blue light around you. Every twitch in your body, your muscle, I mean, someone needs to film you when you're at it. I'm sure they have. Is like messaging that you're sending. It's energy. What blows me away every time is, I mean, we may share and we may understand, and I'm forever learning, but there are moments that happen when you're working that I don't think anyone has quite thought it would work like that. All these creative energies, like the shot with Malik, and how, I mean, did you really work it out with, did it just happen?
It's a sort of spiritual moment. And when I'm working, often when we start off, when we start looking through the camera and we start setting up the lights, you start on a journey. And of course, the beginning of the journey is, without meaning to sound like I'm using a pun, it's very pedestrian. It's very sort of, you start and it's all a little bit kind of hard. You're trying to find things. And at a certain point, you just take off. And it becomes a metaphysical state. It becomes a spiritual state. And that's what you're always aiming to do, to get to the point where actually creation seems natural and not hard.
It's a connection, and that happens, Nick, I think, because there's a balance with your ID, your ego, and your super ego. And when that's balanced, you're in a really good frame of mind, and you're aware that there is a greater power out there. You might not be conscious of it, but when you're at that level, for sure you can receive energies. And it's this creative process where it's the joy, the connection. It just happens because we're all in the right place at the right time. And you can feel in that studio, you could feel the energies from yourself, the mute, everyone involved. There was so much energy in that room. you saw the muses after. I mean, they were shaking. They were like, they'd given it up for you. You know, they'd felt it. They too had got lost in this make-believe world, of almost childlike, wasn't it, to pretend. But and they were, you know, Hannah swimming on the floor. Well, I was convinced she really was swimming, you know, and so were they. They might, you know, Hannah losing it, trying to get out of that beautiful apartment you had evoked was like an expression of what we're all feeling as well, as a result of confinement. And different energies that were tapped into that needed to be released were released because of the trust on that shoot, I think. Because I know my babies, I know how much they can do, but I was so proud of them. You know, at first I was a bit nervous. I was like, you know, Nick's very demanding. It could go on for hours, and just get ready for it. You know, so excited to work. But I mean, after they'd all done like their first shot, boom. I mean, I just stood back and I was like, whoa, look at these kids. They're connected now. Yeah. You created that space for them to feel the connection. Yeah, you created that, your direction, your constant direction, and the trust. It's the trust again, isn't it? It's magical. It's magical. The only one I was a bit nervous of was Scarlett, because I hadn't really worked with her. She's brand new. And I don't know if you remember, I just thought, I don't know how she's going to take all this. So I asked her to come on set and just watch some of the others. Yeah. And I think we were playing Madame Butterfly, and I've since, she'd never heard Madame Butterfly before. Really? She had no idea what this aria was about. I knew it as I was watching it. I could just feel it, Nick. I could just feel it. But her expression and how she just felt the music, trusted you. What she did was like so breathtaking. It was just magic. It's magic, Nick.
No, it certainly is. And I think the thing that that really touched me was, as you say, how they were prepared to just open up and feel, and there was no reserve, there was no sort of shyness or I was incredibly impressed with Nikki. I mean, incredibly impressed with all of them, but Nikki's performance is so powerful and so heartfelt. You know, you have a girl with demon and angel and all the tattoos she has, which do say something about her feelings and how she's been in life and everything else. So there is you know that it's written on her. But then she gave herself so much. It's the one that reduced me to tears, opened me up to tears.
Yes.
I watched it 2 mornings ago. You know, literally, it made me weep, and that's something that it's sort of strange because, of course, I created the work, I'd created the film, so I should have experienced that at the time. But watching it back, it's a funny thing when we create. We're on a certain level, but in a way you don't see everything. You feel things, but you don't see it. And it's a feeling, not a vision. And I think that's something that people don't really understand. That when you're really working, when it really, you know, in our sessions where we're totally giving everything we have to create something, you're not seeing anything. I don't mean you're blind, but it's not the primary sight. You feel it here in your heart.
Yes.
It's a feeling more than a vision is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, we speak of Nikki, who's an incredible soul, and actually quite shy in a way. And often when people work with her, they'll make her look like a boy or encourage her to be more boyish. And when she saw that dress, she was like, "Oh, I'm going to look like a princess." This is what was going through her mind. I mean, amazing. And the idea that she could model like a woman was, I think, so liberating for her. And that we loved her being that too, and tapping into that too, and that we totally loved that. You saw, I mean, it was like, okay, Nikki, we're going to, let's go out and get some, because the energy was unstoppable. You could, like, it was amazing. And that was a beautiful thing to see with the muses, really very, very beautiful. Having worked with them so closely, I kind of know a little their story as well. So to see them through trust, just and the creative process. It's just, I did notice it. I did notice it sometimes. I mean, I was glancing very carefully at the screen and things, but just, we have such a connection that I could feel what was going on as well. And like I said, I was so proud of them.
Yeah.
They're my family. They're my chosen family, you know. They are family.
What you do, and I know this partly because of my son Callum, who worked with you for a while at Margiela, you introduce play into the process. So I know that you have days where you take clothes that are down in the cellar, in the carve, and you try them on, and you get the kids around you to put them on different ways, inside out, upside down.
Dressing up, it's called.
Dressing up. But that's part of play. And I think that's very, although people slightly diminish it as a childish thing, I think it's so important. It's just a liberation to be able to role play, try different things, try different genders, to be different people.
Absolutely. I mean, a little bit more inspiring than the blank page, for sure. And it is a voyage of discovery, and I do encourage it. And you know, you need to know the fundamentals. You can't build the house without the structure, you know. Decorated with the wallpaper, the curtains, all later. But we do need to understand the structure first. And what better way than to try clothes on, try them on inside out, pull them apart, deconstruct them, rebuild them. You know, like children, when we break down our robots and you know, and then build them back together again. It's a very real way of learning and experiencing, and it's not just got to have 20 drawings on a white piece of paper inspired by and you don't have to draw anyway, Nick. I mean, you don't have to know how to draw or illustrate or make patterns, and I mean, eventually you have to have an understanding of how to construct, of course, but you can express yourself through so many other mediums.
Yeah.
It's the idea, it's the concept, it's the idea, isn't it? It's okay, so it's not so fantastically made at the beginning. Doesn't matter. It's getting that idea out there. That becomes a part of you, a part of your vocabulary, and you start building on that and building and learning. I'm still learning. I'm still learning. I mean, you know, a fabric will come in and I think I know everything that there is to know about the bias cut, and then she starts to behave very differently, and the dialogue begins, you know, depending on the weave, the warp, the weft, is it looser weavers. So every time, you never stop learning. And the only way to learn is to have a dialogue, a physical dialogue with all the tools of our trade. That's what I think.
Well, I think I'm doing the same thing from my side. You know, when we're using thermal cameras and we're using, you know, apps that completely invert the image and show you a new color range, and then we're working in a new space. But all of it, I think, leads to this state of mental freedom.
Yes.
And a sort of safety to be able to be free, where you don't feel aggressed, where you feel just like you can pour every bit of energy into this state of creative freedom. And then new visions start to come naturally because you pick things up without worrying about that or without feeling coded. I think your muses have that in their performance as well, that they can try things that they would never normally do. They can let go, they can play. I think it's an incredibly important part of the way you work, John, is that creative liberation that you give yourself in moments like dressing up days. Because and I think that's for me is very, you know, is very akin to how I feel I'm in the studio, to try and get rid of everything real and physical and everything that's sort of the world that we see around us, and find that liberated space where it just feels so natural to be able to do different things and try different things and see different things and create.
Nikki and Anton, they went for a walk after the shooting. A beautiful walk around the Cotswold, and they were sharing stories. I talked to them yesterday, and that they mentioned how liberating they found the whole experience. Both of them used the word liberating, and they felt it was the best shoot they've ever done.
Oh, really?
And they're so proud. And they were, you know, but you know, they went for a walk and they analysed their feelings.
Yeah.
How divine. They were in a state where they could actually share and talk And that's so important, Nick.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah.
Not rush after the next plane, the next job, the next, you know, like they had assimilated it all, and they were sharing, you know, their experiences, and that's just
really beautiful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've really gone off the
We're right off beast.
Sorry, Callum.
The whole process has been very special, but certainly it was a very special moment. The shooting itself was very special. And I, you know, in a way, I'm very happy we did it there and not in a sort of studio in town or whatever, because it did make it feel more of a new thing and more of a special thing. And
definitely.
And a very, very, very much that we were all part of our same sort of same moment all together.
Definitely. And everyone was in this bubble, you know, the kids, when they went off set and in the evening they'd hang out and share stories and stuff, but they were still in this wonderful bubble, creative bubble. They never left it for 1 second, you know. It was amazing. The energy was so good, Nick, really so good.
Lovely, really, really lovely. I mean, sorry, all shoots are really important. The shoots we do together are so magical, and always have been, John, over the years, have always been magical in their different forms, in different ways for different people, but have always been magical. We should talk a little bit about the different narratives that are weaving their way through our film, because they're on several levels. We're okay to talk about the role of Kiela Denise, who is a horror story writer,
yeah,
and who we asked to provide another narrative to make people feel actually there's something else that they're connecting to, not just the fashion film, but actually giving it a rather sort of a spine-tingling, surreal, and a narrative that you don't see straight away, a narrative that sets itself in the back of your mind as you're watching the film. It's very clever. If we managed to succeed in doing, which I think we have, I think it's a very clever thing, because it gives, in one way, a possibility to keep on going like this, the possibility to say, okay, well, next season, do you want to see the next episode? And so there is a sort of a kind of interesting, an interesting proposal there.
Well, I think as well, thanks to Kiela and yourself, and this idea of working with parallel narratives. So it's the story of a collection within the story of a thriller. And as I said earlier, the thriller aspect, I found really appealing, because it could speak the language of what it feels like during the process work and research, if you like, which is like a thriller. And the fact that we were able to weave those two stories simultaneously, and they weave in and out and express those different feelings. I mean, I saw some footage this morning, and I looked at Anton differently.
Right.
When he's back upstairs, and what normally I would take as quite an angelic face.
Yeah.
I'd seen some of the other stuff that you guys have been put in, and then you look at his face and his eyes, and I'm reading, you've colored my vision. And I'm like, ooh, right, okay. So for me, it's working, it's super interesting. I think it's super interesting, and this idea that spirits could be released when we start to hack into charity shop finds is so dear to my heart. I mean, I love the whole.
It's almost quite tangible that the clothes that we wear in some way take on the experiences we have whilst wearing them.
Well, that's what fascinates me about period clothes, old clothes, costume, charity shop finds, that they come imbued with the emotion of the wearer, or a default in the body. If a shoulder was slightly higher, or it was his favorite jacket, and you have the crease marks, or he grew into it, so you have the stress on the back of the sleeve or something. So it kind of like deport. You know, they've worn these clothes for many, many years, and their character is imbued. Well, that for me is just heaven. It just inspires a way of cutting, you know. Whereas kind of in ready to wear, you kind of iron all that out, and you know, no, it all becomes a bit too Milanese for me. I like the defaults that I find in these clothes that I imagine could, I mean, I don't know who would have worn them, but for sure it starts a story. And sometimes the defaults can lead to a whole new way of cutting or exploring a slip lining, a collar that's half hanging off, like I said, ancestral hand-me-downs, obviously a jacket that's been handed down through the family and then unfortunately, you know, got sold in some kind of sale, and you chance upon it, and it's imbued with history, heritage, fabric, the cut, all those things. It's really nice to point all that out when you're doing a fitting, where often we want to polish and smooth and you know, overproduce it almost. But actually, I like that sleeve that's set in wrong. It's really cool. Rappers, let's try it. We need to replicate that because I really like it. I don't lose it. It's a bit more ease on the back, so 1 centimetre out, and that's what's given us that. You know? Yeah.
It's the person's character coming through it.
Yeah.
It's the person's characters, how they wore the clothes, and I think there's also something, again, in the spiritual zone, if you want, of the experience of that. You know, if it's been joyous, traumatic, or sexual, or whatever it's been, it must in some way influence how the cloth is, or we have no idea. I mean, I remember since childhood people saying, oh, at some point in the future they'll be able to read the writing off the walls of all the events that have happened in the room. But and it's sort of kind of, you feel like just about possible, but the clothes are much closer to us than the room. So they must feel the emotion much more profoundly than the walls of the room. I think what you've done in the film is allow that to come through.
That thing you speak about, clothes speaking volumes, and how there are many readings. It happened to me once. I was on a research trip to China, and we went to an amazing market, and there was this like Mongolian family that had come down, and they looked like giants. They were so tall, and faces looked like Modigliani, oval and tanned, and weather-beaten cheeks, like rosy cheeks, and just the beauty and the textiles and the coat. And this guy was wearing this like green coat, and you could see some kind of sheepskin coming out, and this bright red, really beautiful man. And we were all like, oh, wow. And he was having the same reaction. He saw us, and I think I was wearing like, you know, a Levi's jacket and jeans. And he froze, and he clocked me, and I was clocking him in full admiration. And in my head, I was like, oh, where can I find a coat like that? Where can I find a coat like that? And so we approached him and kind of busied ourselves. We didn't want to look like we were staring, but he would not stop staring.
Yeah.
He kind of must have felt what I was feeling or yearning for. I wanted his coat.
Yeah.
He wanted my Levi jacket.
Right.
No words were exchanged. I start to take my Levi jacket off, okay, and just proffer it to him. And he starts to undo the red sash. And I'm like so excited. And then he gives me the coat. I was like, wow, you know, there was an interpreter, but I was the coat. So I gave him my jacket, he gave me the coat. And Stephen was there, and I can't remember who else, and we were just like, oh my God, John, I can't believe that happened. We take the coat back, and I put it on, and I was just, the whole exchange was so exhilarating. And it wasn't till I got back to Paris, we got the coat out, and I was sharing it with others, and I turned the thing inside out. Inside the sleeve was his diary embroidered.
Oh, wow.
We turned through, and all inside the sleeve. Oh!
Yeah. The power of fashion, the power of clothes.
Yeah. And I'm sure he's happy with the Levi jacket, and I'm still have the coat. What an amazing exchange. I'll never forget that. Yeah.
That's a fantastic story. One really important question. It's really to do with the fact that you've, in a way, found fashion film as a way of expressing your collection. Was that something that you find joyful? Would you like to go on doing that?
Yes, very, very much so. I mean, all this came around, I'll be completely transparent with you, Nick. It was a short to mid-term idea almost. But as I got into it, I soon realized that this could be a long-term concept, and that if it worked out well, this blueprint, this vocabulary that we're developing together for these visuals, for sure. I mean, you know, I've done quite a few big rock and roll shows in my time, and I've always preferred the smaller, more salon-like presentations. But this experience, I'm totally converted.
Excellent. Well, on that note, John, we'll keep them on a cliffhanger for the next episode.
All right, then.
Right.
Thank you so much for taking time to
Thank you,
chat.
John.